Hey everybody out there, appreciate you jumping in and coming on another review with me. Today we're going to be looking at the Alpha arms from Stray Dog Strength. Now I am no stranger to lever arms, nor am I any stranger to the amount of hate that lever arms can get in a home gym. And honestly, a lot of that hate is totally deserved. But I do want to come and say, one, I am an advocate for lever arms in home gyms that are well established and looking to expand into that next great thing. And two, although these are probably one of the most expensive rack attached items I've ever reviewed on this channel, they are high quality and something that maybe if you're considering lever arms, you should consider. I want to cover this review in a organized manner. Hopefully I will not have been lazy and actually added the timestamps below, so if you want to jump around and click on different parts of the review, you can do that. But I want to cover what this is, so I'm going to describe it. I'm going to tell you what kind of materials it's made out of, the construction, that'll be part 2. Part 3 is going to be kind of my training notes, which is going to include some stuff with the handles. Part 4 is going to be kind of comparable options. Now that part is going to be unique. You'll want to tune in for that because there's really nothing else quite like this lever arm on the market today. And then of course the last part will be my final recommendation, which if you watched all the way to that part, why wouldn't you want my final recommendation? I mean, that is why you're here. So first, let's read the description from the Stray Dog website. The Alpha arms were designed to offer athletes freedom of movement as they can swing 180 degrees in both the Z and X planes. These arms can be locked in a straight position to be used like a traditional lever arm or locked in an internal or external angle for different movements. This extra plane of rotation provides a more natural feeling during pressing, rowing, or other exercises as your hands can move in or out and not just forward like a traditional lever arm. The arms are compatible with both 1-inch and 5/8 inch holes on 3x3 tubing. They can be added to a welded frame as well. Alpha arms are the next iteration of lever arms that allow athletes freedom of movement and do not restrict their range of motion. Now, I will say that that description is actually pretty well written. I will also say that they are a novel item. Although there are other companies that offer lever arms without modification to those lever arms, with one exception, which is Crandall Fitness, there's nobody else that offers both that Z and X 180 degrees of rotation in both directions. All right, so the first thing off the bat is what is it made out of and what does it look like? So this is 3x3 tubing. It is about 40 inches long from the bolt all the way through to the end. Now the actual tube portion where the 3x3 1-inch is only about 32 inches long, but it's made a little bit longer through the Z-axis converter of excellence. Each individual handle says that it weighs 32 pounds, which is approximately accurate if you were to support the whole unit by itself, which is actually a lot lighter than other ones on the market. And in my opinion, that is a positive thing, not a negative thing, because having a lighter arm makes it easier to adjust up and down the upright, as well as installation is easier. Now, like all Stray Dog stuff, it does come with inline holes, meaning that the holes on the front match up with the holes on the side, but on the front you have the nice carved in, it's CNC'd in laser cut SD logo for Stray Dog, as well as numbers from 12 all the way to 1. Additionally, at the very end of the handle, you have an eye bolt here, which can come in handy if you're someone that's looking to do belt squats on a lever style apparatus. The main thing I end up using this for, which again I'll cover later in usability, is this is how I get my start position, because one of the things that this does not have, that Vendetta has made very popular, is an adapter so that you can just pin this in at whatever height you need for a start position. The actual trolley itself has 4 hourglass shaped rollers. They are made out of UHMW or some sort of acetal perhaps. It's made out of a very durable material, and I have had these things on my rack for well over a year, and I'm pretty sure the guys over at Stray Dog, although I paid for these, have probably been itching for the review to come out. One of the reasons I don't like to do it on things that have a lot of moving parts is because I want to see how they actually wear out. And what I can say about the rollers is that they've stood up really well to abuse, and I really appreciate the fact that each one of them is held in with a long bolt, but on the backside actually has a set screw that makes taking the slack out of those rollers very, very easy to do. With the actual construction of the carriage assembly though, what I will say is that one thing that kind of threw me for a loop was that the way that you install this is actually by removing the top part of the rack so that you expose the 3x3 inch tube. and then you just drop it on over the top. What I've been used to in the past, looking at like rep arms and Rogue arms, which I actually have put out a review on the Rogue LT1 trolley system, is that the back side of the trolley actually comes apart so that it slips over the front. Now at first this kind of put me off, and on the first one I actually took the carriage assembly apart and reinstalled the rollers, and what I can say right off the bat, don't do that. That's going to be a huge pain in the butt for you. You don't want that kind of a headache on your hands. Just undo the bolts at the top of the rack and allow it to scroll down on the top. Once you have it in place, again, adjusting the 4 set screws that are in the back that push those bolts closer or allow them to come farther away, makes it so that you can really eliminate any and all slop that is built into this. And then you can also determine how tight you're going to adjust these 4 bolts so that the unit can still move up and down the rack while also having minimal slop side to side. If we were to actually measure the thickness of the carriage material, what we find is that it is equivalent to about 1/4 inch, or if you speak in millimeters, it is 6.5 millimeters thick material on both sides. Each side of the carriage assembly has 3 holes that are pre-drilled that go and line up nicely with this kind of keyhole style slot that is on the lever arm hinge. What that does is it allows you to pin this in so that it either doesn't move, or you can actually have it to where it starts at the very top, so like up at 45 degrees. And then the very top hole that's right here is a place to put the pin when it's not in use so that it stays out of the way. Now on that, you'll notice that I don't actually have the pin in there. And what I found is that for me, the pin just kind of got in the way, and I didn't really care about locking the arm into any single position. Now there is a screw that attaches to this lanyard that attaches to the pin so that when you pull the pin out, it is conveniently draped right next to the unit so that you can just pin it in place and it stays nice and out of the way through the entire range of motion of the arm. Or you can actually use it to lock it in place. But again, like I said, I never really lock this in place. It's just not how I train. And for me, I just didn't like using the pin, so I just undid the screw, took the pin out, and now it lives on the floor. Now the carriage assembly itself also has a 5/8 as well as a 1-inch hole in the side of the carriage so that when you're adjusting the unit up and down, it can fit on both your 5/8 or 1-inch rack. One thing that I did do is I went and got some speed pins from Surplus Strength. I just personally like these a little bit better than Stray Dog's solution, which was basically this magnetic collar that goes on the side of a hitch pin. Now the actual hinge mechanism rides on a 1-inch bolt that attaches to this bracket assembly that goes down into kind of a custom-made universal joint. That universal joint has a T-handle pop pin that can lock out in position or lock into one of 3 different holes that's actually on the bracket assembly. That allows you to do what the description said, where you can lock it in into actually 5 different positions. So you can lock into the holes to where it's locked in place out here. You can have it to where it's locked in place in line with the upright, or you can actually bring it one further over and it's locked in place here. Now you also have 2 other options, which I really never used, but I guess it is possible to lock it out over here, but I'm not sure why you would do that, as well as to the outside. But again, I'm not sure what we're getting out of that kind of a movement. So realistically, 3 functional settings that you can put this T-handle piece in and continue to use the arms. Now this unique hinge here is actually where the Stray Dog arms, the Alpha arms, actually differ a lot from the Rogue version, the Bells of Steel version, and the Rep version. The only other company, like I talked about earlier, that offers any sort of articulation in or out is going to be Crandall Fitness. And the Crandall Fitness version also fits on 1-inch or 5/8 inch racks. When both the arms are in that kind of configuration, they offer a nice, smooth, very wide range of motion, as the description says, 180 degrees out, and gives you a lot better converging or diverging or If you just want to do some like wax on stuff, whatever you're into, it's to your heart's desire. But the design of the handles is the next place that this one is a lot different, and these handles are very well thought out. One of the issues with adding a Kaizen adapter to a Rogue set of jammer arms is that you're still going to use the Rogue handles. Now, the Rogue handles are fine in their design. I actually don't mind their design. It's different from the Stray Dog version. I don't mind it. I think they're both good. I think they both have their place. But where the Stray Dog one is improved is that it actually welds the pin in line with the upright. What that does is when you load the upright with weight, it doesn't cause it to shift in or out. So here we see a 25-pound plate, and when you have that 25-pound plate and this is in free mode, it actually just sits right there on the upright, right where it should be. This makes the starting position a lot easier to get to, and it keeps it very well balanced. Now, if I take this right handle off, which is very easy to do, and install a weight pin going to the side, like a Rogue handle would have, and then I'll even take one of my utility thingamabobs. All right, so now I've got a loading pin that is coming straight off the upright in line with the actual arm, and on this one I have something that's going to replicate a little bit something closer to the Rogue, Sornex, any of those other versions where the handle actually goes off to the side. Now, with this full articulation, what you're going to see is that when I load this on the side, it's going to naturally want to fall in, and then the plate actually is hitting the rack. So again, nice and balanced, doesn't move very much. When you have the handle to the side, not thought out. So big kudos to Stray Dog on thinking out this handle design. A+ work on that. I only have a couple things I don't like about it, which we'll get to later in the video when I talk about other handle options. Now, the handle itself is super high quality construction. It has this very convenient window right below the SD logo that allows you to see the number that's on the upright so that you know where the handle's positioned on both sides, which makes setup a breeze. 1.5 inch tube, which is 1.9 inch outside diameter, makes it so that it stores plates on there very easily, but also allows you to take them off with one hand. Additionally, this will take axle collars if you do feel the need to collar it. However, with the slight upward angle that the handles come with, there's a high likelihood that you won't need to use collars with this. The handle itself is a 1 inch outside diameter tube material. It's about 9 inches from the top of the handle to the bottom of this handle, and about 13 inches from this bracket to the outside of this handle, 13.5, I think. It has a single 1 inch hitch pin, which makes install a breeze, and the entire inside of this is lined with UHMW plastic, which keeps your Alpha arms looking bright and shiny, just like we all like our home gym equipment to look. So now that I've covered what it is, and I've already touched on a little bit of those quality pieces, I want to go back real quick. I just want to speak to the design and quality of construction overall. Now, all the welds on this are really well done. I got this arm in the clear coat option, which was available. Honestly, it was just kind of a cool option to have and a cool piece to have in clear coat, and I think it looks pretty cool. I don't necessarily treat my equipment with the greatest respect in the world, and there are scratches on the backside of this from where I've tried to use my safety arms to position the uprights into a good starting position. Now, all the welds on this thing are super high quality. There's a continuous weld that goes all the way around the top of this 3x3 where it connects to the plate, and this nice thick piece of material here, which is about 3/8 inch thick, which for you out there that know quality steel items, you know that 3/8 inches is pretty dang thick and can take a load. It comes up to a nice Allen bolt where there's a bushing that actually allows for nice smooth movement from side to side. The same thing goes with this 1 inch bolt. Where it goes in, there's actually a brass or bronze, some sort of other bushing material. That way it's just not steel on steel, which would wear out over time. Also, all the welds on the handles are very well done, to include the flange, which supports the weight. And what they did was they actually welded it on the back side and not on the front side, so that the plate sits flat up against that washer piece, which makes it so you don't get any plate wobble going side to side over superfluous movements. Now that I've covered what it is, how it's constructed, what it's made out of, I'm going to cover my training notes. And this is where we're going to get into my handle substitution piece. So the stock handles are actually really nice. They work really well. I have a feeling that they work super well for sports teams that are trying to accommodate large athletes and small athletes, given their size. But one of the biggest things that I dislike about them is just how much they come into the middle of the rack. In fact, if you were to have both of these on the uprights, if you have them set to the inside, now, if you were to have them both set to the inside, they actually come so close that you can't come through the middle. But they're just so big that like you can't really keep them attached if you're gonna store your lever arms in the down configuration. Now, the reason that I store mine down like this is because I use my lever arms for a bench press lift off. So what I do is basically put my J-cups out here and I pull out, lift up, and then the arms fall naturally out of the way. For me, this is nice because I can get the bar into a really good position, and I use that for my bench pressing. Now, after talking to Jake over at Stray Dog, not the State Farm guy, same, but a little bit different. Basically what we came to is that for most applications with lever arms, they recommend storing the lever arm at the 45-degree up orientation. And honestly, for a lot of the time that I had these, that is how I stored them, but that was because of just how big these handles were, and there's really no good place to put them unless I put them upside down on a horizontal cross member. But I just wasn't doing that because then I would hit the pin that comes off. Basically, all of that to say that I love the Alpha arms. I think they work really well, especially for what they've been designed for. They have minimal slop going through 180 degrees of motion in the Z and X axis. But where I wish that it was a little bit better was perhaps coming with a different handle option. So using the Stray Dog utility pin, I did my first take on replicating the Alpha arm handle. And when you put the loading pin coming out the front with this particular loading pin that uses a bolt and doesn't use a adjustable nut on the backside, you can get really good replicating movements to the Stray Dog handle. Now, this is only advantageous if we can get to a world where the Alpha arms don't come with the handle. But as of the day of making this video, so on January 4th of 2024, when you buy the Alpha arms, you are also buying the Alpha arm handles. That has a lot to do with pricing and just how the market works as far as manufacturing goes. But basically, that's the only place that this comes in handy. And then the other handle variation that I have is this version that uses the Rohrman strength, the Megalith handle, I think is what it's called. Now, the Megalith handle, I gotta admit, was a big part of me coming back to using lever arms again. I kind of got to a point using the Alpha arm handles just because of how big they were, that I wasn't using them because they were always in the way. These ones being much smaller and also articulating made it kind of fun and exciting again. And then also using it for doing things like a pec fly with the utility pin using the Rory handle also was really beneficial. Now, I will say that when it comes to using the handles themselves, there's almost nothing that you can do with this handle that you can't do with that handle outside of the articulation piece, which provides a more natural feel. And there's also nothing that you can do with the Stray Dog handle that you can't do with my little take on the Stray Dog handle, which you can see set up here. The advantage is that it's more modular in nature, so from a home gym perspective, this is a little bit nicer for most users. And again, not to discourage you from looking at the Stray Dog Alpha arms, but if they didn't come with the handle, it might bring the price down a little bit, and as a result, you might be able to purchase a different handle setup that maybe works a little bit better with your home gym. Outside that, there's a lot of really cool pieces on this that I love. So for instance, when we go back to the carriage assembly, I absolutely love that it comes with the 4 hourglass style rollers and that it doesn't actually have any UHMW on each side of the upright. What that does is it allows you to have things like these little hole markers from plate snacks that I have that mark the position from when I'm doing fig jam or hack squats. Sometimes it gets difficult to remember where all that stuff goes, so by using those little holes, I can actually adjust the unit up and down, and the Alpha arm carriage doesn't cause it to come off. Also, as stated, the handles are pretty light, so when they're unloaded, you can move them very easily up and down the upright without much work at all. I do recommend that you lock in position and get everything out of the way. I totally planned this out. But when you have it completely unlocked, they move up and down the rack, nice and smooth. They don't really leave rub marks at all, and you kind of have like a one-handed up and down adjustment that is pretty easy to do. I mainly use these machines for row type movements, deadlift type movements. I also use them to do a lot of pressing type movements, whether that's pressing outwards or pressing upwards, walking out here, or even putting my bench out in position and using my Henny straps, which I keep here, to actually give me a really solid starting position by just clipping onto the front. What's also nice about this is it leaves my Henny in a really good position that's set up so that if I do want to use my Henny system with my jammer arms installed, I should say my alpha arms installed, I'm able to just move everything out of the way and basically slam this all the way down to the ground. And now my Henny is freely there to put a barbell into, and the actual handle assembly is out of the way so that I can use both my alpha arms as well as my Henny system. Although they do different things, one of the things that the Henny does different than the alpha arms is that the Henny is a bilateral movement, where in a lot of cases the alpha arms are a single-sided movement or a unilateral movement. Even if you are moving both sides at the same time, they are free to move back and forth. All right, so for the last bit that I know you all have been waiting for, and that's going to be price. Now, I priced this out a little bit different. What I did is I went to Rogue and I priced out a Mark 1 or LT1 trolley system in the Monster series with the longer arms, not the shorter arms, and I added that to a Kaizen adapter from Gympin to get a total price of $1,518. That does not include shipping, that does not include tax, and you're having to buy it from two separate areas. Now, if you go to Stray Dog, it's going to cost you $1,700, but with coupon code KL10 at checkout, you save 10% off the order, striking $170 off the price of the handles, which brings it right down to almost the exact same price as the Rogue and Gympin combination. Now, there are other variations down below. I'll link the Crandall Fitness handles, which actually do have the articulation back and forth. And I will also link the rep arms, which don't have the articulation, but I'm sure that you can get an adapter for them. But when it comes to lever arms, the Stray Dog Alpha arms are really kind of the pioneer into the full articulating Z and X axis. All right, so lastly, is this for you? Now, if you're watching this video and you don't even have a gym yet, you should not be looking at the alpha arms. I mean, watch the review, definitely get an idea of what's out there, but you should not be purchasing alpha arms. Even with the KL10 coupon code, trust me, this is not what you wanna buy first. You should get what Garage Gym Lab calls the Core 4, which is gonna be your rack, your weights, which are gonna be like your plates, your barbell, and your bench. I got that right. If you're at home and you have a really cool gym and you're starting to get to a point where you want to replicate machine type movements, specifically machines targeting the upper body that are big compound movements, or maybe you just enjoy pressing with lever arms, or maybe you're into triphasic training and you want a good set of arms that can angle up at 45 degrees and actually be the anchor point up high for those bands for when you're doing triphasic jumping, then perhaps these might be right up your alley. They can also be considered for something when you're trying to expand and maybe you're looking at dumbbells and a full set of dumbbells isn't really in the game. You can do flies with this. You can do some variation of barbell curls with these, although to a little bit less of a degree. There's a lot that you can do with a hinge point and a lever that can replicate machine type movements. Whether or not this is actually for you, though, is going to depend on your budget, your predisposition towards lever arms, which are a hot topic issue. I guarantee you there's going to be hate talking about how lever arms are stupid and you shouldn't have lever arms in your gym. Well, guess what? I've got them and I like them. But when you do get to a point where you're considering lever arms for your gym, I would hope that you look at the Stray Dog Alpha arms and at least consider the fact that if you were to get the Rogue version with the Kaizen DIY adapters, which are an awesome set of adapters and honestly a really good product as well. But that's been it for this review. I really intended to keep it short. We'll see how it goes in post-editing, how short I can make this thing. But when it comes to your training, you should always keep it better, awesome, and of course, badass. I'll see you next time.